All right, guys, so welcome to section 3 of chapter 6 biomes. When we learned in section 1 was just what's a biome, and what we learned most important about biomes is that depending on where you are in the world, two things are going to be used to determine what kind of biome you have. You'll have the temperature and the amount of rainfall. Those two things are going to determine what type of biome you have. And then we learned in section 2, we were talking about the forest biomes. So all four of these forest biomes that was in section 2, the tropical rainforest, the temperate rainforest, the temperate deciduous forest, and the taiga. All four of those forest biomes, they've got enough rain to make a tree. So now we're going to talk about these other ones, grassland, desert, tundra, and savanna. All right, these don't have enough to make a tree. So that's how we separate the sections up. So section 2, those forest biomes, they've got enough rain to make a tree. In these biomes, we do not have enough rain to make a tree. So what you're going to get is grasslands at first, and then you have even less rain, you're going to get into desert and tundra, okay? So that's what section 3 is. All right, so in the climates that have less rainfall, like we said, we don't have enough to grow a tree. We have less than the forest biomes get, so we're going to have savanna, grassland, chaparral, which you'll learn what that is soon. You get even less, you're going to get desert and tundra. Okay, as precipitation decreases in the area, the diversity of species also decreases. Okay, you're going to get fewer different types of species that can live there. You remember we learned with the tropical rainforest, because they get the most rain, they have the most different types of species as well. As you decrease the rainfall, you get fewer and fewer types of species that can live there. However, you might get a whole bunch of one kind of animal. So it doesn't necessarily limit the number of animals, just the number of types of animals that can live there. As the precipitation decreases, the diversity decreases, okay? You have fewer types. You can still have a whole bunch of animals. Think about a herd of buffalo or a herd of wildebeests. You could have a bunch of animals, but you have fewer types of animals. All right, moving on. Savannas is the first one we're going to talk about. All right, so savannas are plains, grassland plains with scattered trees and shrubs that are going to be in tropical and subtropical habitats. So these are near the equator. Okay, so grasslands near the equator are called savannas. And of course, this is where the lions live and the zebras and all that stuff. So they're found mainly in regions with dry climate. Let me see if my pencil works. Is this going to work my pen now? Yeah. So very dry climates, okay? Where at? Eastern Africa and Western India. That's where you're going to find them. We all know this. We can just see a picture like this and we know we're talking about Africa. Okay, so although savannas get very little precipitation through the year, they do have a wet season and a dry season. So since we're near the equator, we don't get all four seasons. We don't get spring, summer, winter, fall. We're near the equator. Equator doesn't get that. Equator's hot all year round. So equator doesn't get spring, summer, winter, fall. Equator has wet, dry. That's the only seasons you have. Okay, many animals are only going to be active during the wet season, and grass fires actually help restore nutrients to the soil during the dry season. The dry season is so dry that lightning can start a fire very easily, but because it happens so often, the savannas have actually adapted, and actually almost all of the grasslands have adapted to constant fires, and the fires actually add nutrients back into the soil. So they have it so often there. And here's our map again, our chart. If you look, this is the temperature line, and the temperature line is almost the same all the way across. Remember, the temperature numbers are on this side. This side tells us the temperature. And it's almost the same all the way across because, like I said, this is the equator. They don't get winter, spring, summer, fall. They just got hot all the time. All right, but they do have a wet season and a dry season. You see that? And so a lot of the animals they'll time having their babies during the wet season, and they'll follow the wet season around for the new grasses and stuff. I'll tell you about that in a second. But again, these are near the equator. You know, this is the equator right here in the middle. So here's some of them, okay? These are all near the equator. These are the savannas. all near the equator. This is the one in India, and then there's also some here in Australia. Okay, all of these are near the equator. These are savannas. Hot all year round. Okay, see the temperature line? They're hot all year, and they have a wet season and a dry season. All right. All right, so the plants of the savanna, the rain's going to fall just during the wet season. All right, the rainy season. So the whole rest of the year, they're going to have to figure out what they're going to be able to do to survive without water. So the plants have adapted to living without water. And one of the things they do is they'll have horizontal root systems to help them survive, so that if there's a fire, okay, if there's a fire on the savanna, say maybe this part of the plant burns with long horizontal root systems, fire hits here, but the roots can come back here. Okay, this part of the plant wasn't damaged, and so because of the horizontal root system, they can help grow back after the fire. And also, the grasses are going to have coarse vertical leaves to expose less surface area. Usually, if this is a leaf, okay, most of the time plants' leaves lean out like this so that they can catch sunlight to do photosynthesis. But in the desert, almost all of the plants stick straight up, okay, so that the sun only hits the very tip, okay, so that you don't burn off all the water that might be in there. They're also very coarse, very stiff, all right, and most everything also has thorns to protect them from the animals. The herbivores are going to try to eat everything that they can get their hands on, so almost all of the plants of the savanna have thorns on them. All right, so the animals in the savanna are mostly going to be these grazing herbivores. So if the savanna is basically a grassland, you're going to have animals that eat grass. They're going to be the grazing herbivores, okay? Elephants and zebras, antelopes, what else? Wildebeest, lots and lots of wildebeest. And of course, wherever you have those animals, they're going to follow the rains, okay, to find new grass and fresh watering holes. Wherever you have the animals, you're going to have the predators right behind them, stalking them, okay? And also, because the animals have adapted to this wet season, dry season thing, most of them are only going to give birth during the rainy season. That way, the babies have plenty of food available and have a better chance at surviving. Um, and also, because you got the wet season and dry season, competition is going to be a big deal, especially during the dry season. So, what some of the animals do is they'll eat vegetation at different heights than other species do. Some will eat the tips of the grass, some will eat further down. Like giraffes are going to eat the tops of the trees. So all of those things that helps to reduce competition. Now, that was savannas that we were talking about, grasslands on the equator. Now we're talking about near where we live, temperate grasslands. All right, so these are the ones, remember you have your three areas. You have the equator right in the middle, you have the poles, top and bottom, and then in the center in between there, you have the temperate zones. This is what I'm talking about. So you have the equator, the poles, and the temperate zones are in the middle. So these are temperate grasslands. All right, they're dominated by grasses with very few trees, just like the savanna was. But this time, because we're temperate, we do have all four seasons, hot summers and cold winters. Remember, savanna doesn't get all four seasons, they just have wet and dry season. We have all four, spring, summer, winter, fall, here in the temperate zones. And so that's what they have, hot summers and cold winters, and rainfall that's intermediate between that of a forest and a desert. Remember we said because they have middle layers of precipitation, they don't have enough to grow trees. They're better than a desert, so you're going to get a grassland. Temperate grasslands have the most fertile soil of any biome. Now that's a big, big deal because the temperate grasslands, these are the prairies of the United States. Think buffaloes and prairie dogs and coyotes and stuff like that. Okay, the temperate grassland. But that's what they're supposed to be like in nature. Because they have such fertile soil, we have planted them all up just about. There's very little true prairie left. Temperate grassland, there's very few of them left. Most of them are all full up with plants because they have this, full up with farms because they have so much fertile soil. So very few natural temperate grasslands remain because they've been replaced by grazing areas and farms growing stuff like corn and soybeans and wheat. Now, the temperate grasslands are located on the interiors of continents. Um, so if this is the United States, let me try to make you a map here. It's not a very good map. Okay. That's Florida down there. Okay. Okay. This, of course, Mexico is down here. I just don't have it connected. Okay. That's Mexico down there. Texas right there. All right. So the grasslands, does that make sense to you guys where I am? Okay. This is Mexico. This is California, Florida here. Okay. The grasslands are right here. Let me pick another color. In the interiors of continents. All right. Right here in the middle. All right. And so because we have mountains right here, that's a big, big deal. There's a set of mountains right here on this side of the world near California. And as the rain goes up on top of the mountain, it drops all of its water as it climbs the mountain. When it goes to the other side of the mountain, there's no water left. And that's where we're going to get these grasslands because there's not enough water here for trees, not enough precipitation. So as the rain climbs up these mountains from the ocean, okay, the water's going to come in from the ocean side. As it climbs up the mountains, it's going to drop its moisture as it climbs the mountains, and when it goes to the other side of the mountain, it's dry. So mountains are going to play a crucial role in maintaining grasslands. Let me put it back on red again. As the rain clouds from the west are blocked. So however, the rainfall does increase as you move eastward, allowing taller grasses to grow. So here in the United States, this side of the prairies are the shortgrass prairies, getting longer and longer as you go this way. Okay, so you're going to have longer grasses or taller grasses here on this side. So shortgrass on near the mountains, and this is also deserty area. Think of New Mexico. This is where the deserts are. All right. So as soon as you get enough precipitation to get out of the desert, one more color. I guess green will work right here. Okay. So the deserts are in here. All right. And as you get enough rain to get out of the desert, then you're going to move into the grasslands right here. All right. You have the short grass here getting into taller grass as you go towards the eastern coast. So taller grasses as you go east. Heavy precipitation is rare. It's going to be very dry most of the time, allowing the hot temperatures in the sun to spark a lot of fires. So again, just like the savanna, you're going to have a lot of fires here in these areas. And the plants and the animals that are native to these areas are adapted and evolved to live and survive, well, to adapted to these fires all the time. Here's our map for this one. Okay, again, this is a temperate grassland. So we do, what was this line again? Do you guys remember? This line is the temperature line. So because this is a temperate grassland, we do have all 4 seasons. This is summer where it's really hot, and this is winter on this side and down here too. See this, here's a month, this is December, and this is January, okay? So yeah, this is winter on these low sides of the temperature, and the numbers are here to read them. Winter on these sides and summer in the middle. And the rains fall here also. Okay, you're going to have a lot more rain here, mostly in the springtime, where it dips down here in the summer. And this is temperate grasslands, so we're up here in these areas, okay, the middle zones. We're not near the equator this time. And of course, on the top and bottom of the world. There's not really any of this in Africa, but there's some here in Australia. Okay, so these are on tops and bottoms. These are the temperate zones. Okay, now talking about the plants of the grasslands, as we said, when you are closer to the mountains let me do the quick thing here. Okay, as we said, the ones closer here on this side, closer to the desert side, you're going to have shorter grasses, and as you go over here, you're going to have taller grasses. So the root system of the prairie grasses form dense layers to survive the drought and fire, allows the plants to come back year after year. As we said, there's so many fires, they have to be adapted to it. And very few trees are going to survive the grasslands because of the lack of rainfall, the fire, and the constant winds. There are winds because there aren't any trees. There's winds on these prairies all the time. And then the amount of rainfall in the area is going to determine what type of plant will grow in that area with varying root depth and grass height. As we said here on this side, let me pick another color. On this side, Okay, we have deserts right here near the mountains in California. So here's California, here's a set of mountains, okay? And then we have the deserts in New Mexico and Arizona. Then once you get past the desert, we have very short grasses going into longer grasses. I've got a real good picture on the next slide. Let me show you. All right, so see here? So these are the ones, so if we have our United States here, I can't do it on top of there, okay? Oh, that's a really bad United States. Can I erase that? Oh. Okay, try this again. The picture of the United States gets worse and worse as I go through. Okay, there's Florida. Okay, all right. And so again, we have the California side over here, and then you have a set of mountains, and then you have desert. All right. As soon as you get out of the desert, you're going to start these short grasses, okay? Because this whole thing is about the amount of precipitation it gets. See, there's 50 centimeters per year, 88 centimeters per year. So right here on this side of the desert, you're going to start with the short grasses, and then you get into the mixed, and then you get into the tall grass prairies. The tall grass prairies, because if you know your United States, about the time you get to uh, Oklahoma and Kansas, you're getting into these longer tall grass prairies, right around in here, just before you get to Arkansas. Okay. All right, so that's where they exist. And the taller the grass is, also the bigger the root system. And again, that's one of the things that's going to make such fertile soil, because we said a minute ago that with these prairies, they have really, really heavy snows in the wintertime. Okay. So you know how when there's been snow on the grass gets kind of gooey, like it's trying to decompose. Okay, so because these heavy snows in the prairies trap the grass, okay, the grass doesn't start to decompose until the snow melts off. So then it's just about ready to fully decompose with the spring thaw. This nutrient-rich grass all of a sudden hits the soil, and that's when the new spring growth is ready. And so it's really, really fertile soil. So these are the animals that live here. So again, with the grasslands in the United States, we want to think about buffalo and prairie dogs, but there's also grasslands in South America too. And in South America, we're talking about maned wolves. We're talking about rhea, the birds. We're talking about llamas. Okay, so so other grasslands. Here we go. So the grazing animals that have to live in these grasslands, like the bison and pronghorn, these are in the U.S., have large flat teeth to chew up these grasses. Other grassland animals like prairie dogs, owls, badgers, they live in underground burrows because there's no trees. They live in underground burrows to protect them from the predators of the open grasslands. Same thing's going to happen when we have the grasslands not in the United States, South America, and then in Australia, the grasslands that are there. Now, what are the threats to the temperate grasslands? Well, of course, farming is the main one. There's such rich, rich soil that we have very few prairies left. Farming and overgrazing is the main thing. The trouble with grain crops, like the replacing the prairie grass with like corn and wheat and stuff, their root system is very shallow. The root system of the grain crops is very, very shallow. The grass root systems are very, very deep. So they hold on to the soil. The plants like corn, the grain crops, the agricultural crops, their root system is so weak that soil erosion is a really big problem. Soil erosion has caused the grasses, is also caused when the grasses are eaten and trampled. So when you have too much grazing, too many animals eating on this prairie, they're going to ruin the grass, and the erosion is going to happen if too much of the grass is taken off because they're eating. So constant use will change these fruitful grasslands into desert-like biomes, because there's not a lot of rain here, and if you don't take care of the soil, you're going to turn this grassland into a desert. All right, here's the next one. This one's called Chaparral, and Chaparral may be one that you haven't really heard of, but if you grew up like I did, if you've ever seen cartoons of the Wile E. Coyote and the Roadrunner, The areas where they are, it's not full desert. Okay, Chaparral is like in between a grassland and a desert. All right, it's a temperate woodland biome with vegetation that's broadleaf evergreen shrubs. So it's like shrubs here, not just grass. Hot, dry summers and mild, wet winters. Okay, they're in the middle latitudes, about 30 degrees north and south of the equator, and they're called Mediterranean climates. Okay, Mediterranean climates because of course, the Mediterranean in Europe has a climate like this. So let's see, this is what they look like. So you do have some seasons, okay, but not much. So the summers don't get very hot and the winters don't get very cold. Do you see how the line is almost straight? All right, and then you have, look how dry this is down here. Do you see the dry season? Okay, and then you have the wet season here. This is almost desert-like dry. And so we're going to have a lot of fires here as well. But look how few areas. There's a little area here on California and on the side of it looks like Peru. All right, and right here, this is where the Mediterranean is. That's how it got its name. And then down here a little bit on Australia. Very few places. They're called chaparrals. And so the plants of the chaparral, because it is so even drier than anything we've seen so far, we have evergreen shrubs and small trees in dense patches. Okay, they lived all together in little dense patches. Um, these are some of the names of the plants: manzantia, scrub oak, herbs, sage, and bay. They have small leathery leaves with a lot of oil to promote burning. They want to burn, okay, allowing natural fires to destroy competing trees. Okay, so since they grow in clumps like this, the plants are very, very aggressive. Lots of oil in the plant. You know, when they talk about having fires in California, it's because of these plants. The chaparral plants are very well adapted to fire and can resprout from small bits of surviving plant tissue. So they actually fill their leaves full of oil to burn up the competition, and then they resprout after the fire. All right, so the animals that live on the chaparral, let me make sure I don't go too many slides. There we go. Okay, you got jackrabbits, okay, and coyotes, okay. The common adaptation is camouflage, shape and coloring that allows them to blend in the environments, like quail and lizards and chipmunks and mule deer. They all have a brownish gray coloring that lets them move through the brush without being noticed. Um, and so they have to, competition would be very, very strict here also. So camouflage is one of the main things that the animals are going to have. And then okay, so the threats to the chaparral are the main threat is human development. I don't know if you paid good attention when I went over the temperature range, but it's very low of a thing. So the summertime is not too hot. That's what the temperature line looked like. The summer's not very hot and the winter's not very cold. And it's the Mediterranean climate, so you're right there on the ocean. In all instances of where you found it on the globe, there was ocean nearby. So it's a environment that humans really, really, really thrive in. So human development is the worst problem for the chaparral. Humans tend to develop these areas for commercial and residential use because they got a lot of sun, they're near the oceans, and they have a mild climate year round. So the biggest threat to the chaparral is us. All right, let's move on to deserts. Let me try to move on to deserts. All right, deserts. Again, this whole thing's about precipitation. We're just about run out. We had enough precipitation for grasses, and now that we had a little bit less for the chaparrals, and now even less for the desert. Deserts are regions that have little or no vegetation, long periods without rain, and extreme temperatures. There are hot and cold deserts. There are cold deserts. The one characteristic they share is that they are the driest places on Earth. They're most often located near the big mountain ranges because the mountains can block the passage of moisture, filled clouds, limiting precipitation. Do you remember when I tried to show you the picture of the United States here? Let me try to do it again. There's Mexico going down that way. And then Florida. Of course, that's not very good on Mexico. Sorry about that. Florida, The whole thing's not very good. Give me a second. Let me try to do this better. Go away. Erase. Erase. Okay, let me try to do this a little bit more accurate. So we have there's the California side going down into Mexico. Mexico kind of spins off like this, and then you have Texas and then Florida. All right, that's a little closer. All right, so over here on the California side, okay, here, this, oh, I thought I picked a color. This is California here, okay? There are mountains right here near California. And then right here next to it is where the deserts are, right here. Because remember I told you the grasslands head out this way? Okay, this is where the desert is, right here near the mountains. And what I tried to show you a minute ago, as the rains and the clouds come in off the ocean this way, okay, they hit the mountains and rise up. As they rise up the mountains, they start to drop their rain, and then they move on over top the mountain. Once they move over top the mountain, they're dry. So they call this the rain shadow effect. All right, so almost everywhere in the world, you have a set of mountains right here. On the other side of it, you'll find a desert. Almost everywhere in the world, you can almost count on it. All right, I think, yeah, I'm going to show you on the map on the next slide here. Watch this. All right, so again, here's our deserts, okay? We do have seasonal weathers. We do have times when it is warmer and times when it is colder, but look, they didn't forget to put the blues in. They're just tiny. This is where we have our rain, almost nothing. All right, here's the one. I wish this was a different color because this is really hard to see. But here's the desert here near California, okay? So the mountains are right here, okay? And then after the rain comes off the ocean, travels up the mountains. I guess I should go this way so it matches. Rain comes in off the ocean, travels up the mountains. As it travels up the mountains, it's going to drop its, am I going the right way? I can't tell. Anyway, I'm trying to match the picture. But as the clouds go up the mountains, they're going to drop their rainfall in the mountains. And then as they cross the mountains, they're dry. So same thing here, almost everywhere you see them, that's just about what's happening in all of these areas where you find desert, is that actually this is just because it's so hot. But here's another one. There's near the mountains, you're going to find deserts just beside them. It's the rain shadow effect. The mountains block the rain. Okay, the plants of the desert. Okay, what do you think is the most important thing about a plant in a desert? Figuring out how to get their water, right? Or how to keep their water, conserving their water. Okay, so the most important thing about the desert plants is that they have adaptations for obtaining and conserving water, which allows the plants to live in this dry desert. The main plant you're going to have is called a succulent, which is like a cactus's type of succulent. This is aloe. It's another type of succulent. They have thick, fleshy stems and leaves that are going to conserve water. They also have a waxy coating and usually have sharp spines to keep the animals away. And many of the plant roots are going to spread out just under the surface to absorb any rain that's possible. Some others will have very deep roots in order to dig down as much water deep as they can get. So you have two choices: horizontal roots spreading out to the side in order to catch any rain there might be. Others with very deep roots, called a tap root, a very deep root, in order to dig down and to get as much rain deep as they can get. Some more about the plants of the desert. A lot of them are adapted to live for very long periods without any water. If the conditions are too dry, the plants are going to die and drop their seeds with the hope that the seeds will stay dormant until the next rainfall. So the plant itself will just die and drop seeds. Once it does rain, okay, the new plants are going to very quickly germinate and grow and bloom again before the soil becomes dry again. So some of the most beautiful pictures in the world are a desert right after the rain, okay, because they know that they've got to use that water as quickly as they can before it runs out. So everything's going to flower and bloom all at once. Flower, bloom, make seeds before it dies again. So some of the photographers try to time their visits to the desert for right after a rainfall because it's so beautiful. But then the plants can survive their water content dropping as low as 30% of their mass. There are some cactuses that you can actually watch shrivel over the days as they run out of water, and then after a rain, they'll swell back up again. So some of the cactuses will actually, the sides of them look like accordions, okay, as they're using their water or trying to live without it. So let's see what happens about the animals that live in the desert. Let's see, this one. There we go. All right, so they also have to be adapted to prevent water loss. There are some animals that never drink one drop of water at all. A lot of reptiles will live in the desert. Their reptiles are very well adapted for desert life. They have thick, scaly skin that prevents water loss. Amphibians, which are frogs and toads, if they live in the desert, they'll survive by estivating, which is burrowing themselves in the ground, sleeping through the dry season. So the way that you can remember what estivating is, it's just like hibernating, sort of. Okay, so hibernating is sleeping through the cold season, right? You know bears, right? Hibernating is sleeping through the cold system. Estivating is sleeping through the dry season. Same concept. Okay, hibernating is sleeping through the winter. Estivating is sleeping through the dry. And so the amphibians will do that. They'll sleep through the dry season. And of course, there's always bugs. The insects are covered with body armor that helps them to retain water. That's why bugs crunch, right? The body armor will help them retain water. And also, a lot of the desert animals are nocturnal, so that they'll be active at night or at dusk at least, when it's cooler at night. Okay, so there's one biome left, and this is the tundra. It's just as dry as a desert, but this time we're up near the poles, so it's very, very cold. The tundra is almost as dry as a desert. All right, so it's a treeless plain that's located in the Arctic or Antarctic. So we're up around the poles. Remember, we learned about taiga that was near the poles. Okay, remember the taiga, the coniferous forest, was near the poles. Now we're up at the poles. This is the tundra, characterized by very low winter temperatures, short, cool summers, and vegetation that is just grasses, lichens, and herbs. That's all that can live there. The summers are very, very short on the tundra, so only the top few centimeters of the soil will thaw. Do you remember learning about permafrost? Permafrost is the permanently frozen layer of the soil or subsoil that can be found in tundra regions. So it's so cold that the bottom layers of soil never thaw out. Now, the thing of trouble with that is in the summertime, when the first couple centimeters on top that does thaw out, okay, think about with me. Permafrost. The bottom layers of soil never ever thaw out. In the summertime, the top couple of centimeters of soil will thaw out, but it's slushy and muddy. Okay, so flies and mosquitoes are really crazy in the summertime in the tundra because almost the whole couple centimeters across the whole area is like a mud puddle. The whole thing is like a mud puddle in the summertime. All right, so again, look, see, all of the other temperature ranges were up around here. Remember all the other temperature lines? This one is way down here, okay? That is the freezing mark, okay? Let me clear this off so I clear my mess off of here. All right, so we are way down here. Freezing mark is normal, okay? This is winter. And then summertime, the best you get is looks about 10 degrees, okay? Celsius. Okay, so it's not Fahrenheit, but still it's crazy cold. And you get more rain than a desert, okay? Definitely more rain than a desert, but it's still incredibly cold. And we're up here near the poles, okay? We're not in the temperate zones anymore. We're up in the Arctic. Up in the Arctic. And the reason they don't have one on the bottom half of the earth is because down here it's all ice. It's not land, it's just ice. Okay, vegetation of the tundra. What plants can live here? Let's see. There we go. Okay, mosses and lichens are the primary plant. Okay, they can grow without soil. Do you remember when we learned about mosses? Lichens. Lichens is the one that is a combined species of a fungus and an algae. you remember how the lichens are two species that live together? Because the soil is frozen most of the time. The lichens are a good bet because they don't have to dig down into the soil. They've got the fungus providing the support and the algae providing the photosynthesis. So lichens and mosses can grow without soil and cover vast areas of rocks on the tundra. The soil is very thin, so the plants have wide, shallow root systems, okay, that help anchor against the icy winds. There's a lot of wind going on here. And most of the flowering plants are very short, all right, which helps keep them out of the wind and helps them to absorb heat from the sunlit soil. So as the sunlight hits the soil and bounces back up, these plants can get it. If they were too tall, all right, the wind would knock them over. It'd be very cold up here in the wind, so they stay very short. The woody plants and perennials have evolved dwarf forms that grow flat along the ground. If you try to stick your head up, the plant tries to get any kind of tall, the winds are going to knock it really cold, really, really cold. So let's see what animals live in the tundra. We got our polar bears, okay? We also have wolves, moose, caribou, especially. Remember, that's like a reindeer, okay? Like Santa's reindeer. Yep, caribou. They migrate throughout the tundra in search of water and food. Now, birds, remember when I said it was like a mud puddle in the summertime and there are bugs and flies everywhere? The birds will come through here to eat all these bugs in the summertime. They'll breed in the summer when there's plenty of food around, and then they'll leave when it gets cold. The hunters, like wolves, are going to eat the migratory caribou, deer, and moose. Rodents are going to stay active, especially because they can burrow underground to help stay warm and avoid the cold. And other year-round residents, like Arctic foxes, are going to lose their brown summer coat for white fur to camouflage them in the snow. Remember, we talked about like the rabbits will be white in the wintertime and brown in the summer. They've evolved to match for camouflage. Now, threats to the tundra. Now, this is something you may not realize. The tundra is one of the most fragile biomes on the whole planet. It's very easy to damage it, especially with that permafrost. If that permafrost starts to melt, the grasses and stuff that are trapped in the permafrost will start to decompose, and they'll release carbon dioxide and methane into the air, which are greenhouse gases, and they're going to heat up the world even faster. So the tundra is one of the most fragile biomes on the planet, and the food chains here are relatively simple, so it's very easy to disrupt them. And until recently, they've been undisturbed by humans because it was too cold for us to get there. But now we're getting better at expanding our places, and we found oil there, so we're tearing the place to pieces. Okay, oil was located in parts of the tundra, and oil exploration, extraction, and transport has completely disrupted many of the tundra habitats. Then pollution caused by the ocean spills or leaks of the oil and other toxic materials will also poison the food and water sources of the organisms of the tundra. So it's a very, very fragile biome. The stuff we're doing is tearing it to pieces. All right, so let's have a quick review of what we covered. Remember, in section 1, we learned that the biomes were organized by where they were on the world: equator, temperate zones, or poles. And then there was two things that were determined what kind of biome you'd have, was the temperature and precipitation. And then in section 2, we learned about the biomes. They have enough rain to make a tree. So there were four forest biomes. You have the tropical rainforest that gets the most of all the rains. Then the tropical temperate rainforest, the temperate deciduous forest, and the taiga. Remember, the taiga is up near the Arctic Circle. That's the coniferous pine forest. Temperate deciduous forest is where we live. Temperate rainforest is a rainforest near the ocean, but it's temperate. It has 4 seasons. And then the tropical rainforest, where all of the animals of the world are. Now, those were the ones that get enough rain to make a tree. The ones in this section are the ones that don't get enough to make a tree. We have the savanna, then we have the temperate grasslands, then we have the chaparral, which is a weird little one right around the Mediterranean that gets, and also on California, where a lot of people want to live there. And then we did deserts, and then we did tundra. Okay, so rewatch any of these videos to help you remember, and we're going to have our test coming up very, very soon. All right, so I'll see you guys the next time. Bye, y'all.